Hey everyone, today we have some ARES gameplay. I know it's been over a week since I last uploaded, but yeah, we are back. So I'm going to be going over how you build ARES. I've got I think 1 or 2 stars with him, and I've tried so many different builds, so this is my personal favourite one. Some alternative items and situational items that you might want to build as a support in general. Some misconceptions about ARES, like items that people build on ARES that I found didn't work for me, and just some other things like how you would play around this build, how you'd get the most out of it. So for the first item, you obviously go for your starter item. To be honest, any starter item works on ARES, they're all fine, you know, benevolence, sentinels and all that. I personally go with sentinels because when you upgrade it, it's an aura item and it's got extremely good stats. I prefer it over compassion and war flag, although I haven't tried war flag's new changes yet, so that's something I need to go with. But the starter item is really your choice. My second item I go for is Mantle of Discord. So usually you would go for Gauntlet, but I prefer Mantle simply because of the protections straight away. Unlike most other Guardians, ARES doesn't have an escape. So Athena, Cthulhu, Sobek, they all have dashes that you can use aggressively, but you can also use them defensively to get out of situations. Because ARES hasn't got that, he's only got his chains, which you have to turn around, chain them, then run away, which sucks. Like, it's a really bad item to get away, but it's the only one that you have. So because he hasn't got a getaway early on in the game, he tends to die really easily. If you build Gauntlet first item, that's just health and HP 5, like the tier 1, 2 and 3 versions. Unstacked, it's just health and HP 5. And early game, because everyone builds power, you'll get shredded with just Gauntlet before you stack it, and by the time you stack it, you know, you're kind of useless, like you'll die easily, so you have to run away a lot. Whereas if you build Mantle, that's 60 protections of each. It's extremely hard to kill you, and that makes you a lot more effective in teams fights, because if they try to focus on you, you'll stay alive and you can easily win fights early game. The cooldown works really well late game and early game, so it lets you do your ult a bit more, and which is amazing on ARES. That's something I'll talk about a bit later, cooldown. But yeah, you would want to build Mantle simply because you would want to survive early game, and unstacked Gauntlet doesn't do that. For your third item, you want to go Gauntlet. It's got great stats, and even before you stack it, it still works really well because now you actually have protections to make use of the health and the HP 5, whereas before it wasn't that useful. But health scales really well with protections. And also obviously the passive, I don't really want to go over and over about how this item is great, but just go for Gauntlet's third item, it's really good. So for your fourth item, you either go with a Pestilence, a Contagion, or a Predwin. So Predwin's incredible because it gives you defense, which is what you really want on ARES, and it gives you cooldown, which is an incredible stat. So cooldown allows you to ult often. So the thing about ARES, if people don't bead or they don't use CC immunity, then they're screwed when you ult them because it takes them out of place and they die really easily. So what will happen is people will tend to bead your ult or CC immune it, like let's say a Hercules ult, that's a CC immunity. So what you want is you want cooldown, so that way you can use your ult again before they get their cooldown back. So that's why Predwin is really good, because it gives you 20% cooldown. The passive of it, the shield that does damage, that's okay. I don't know if it's amazing, but it's alright. It doesn't feel that great in game. But yeah, you really want to build it for the cooldown and for the defense. Once you build Predwin, you get a 30% cooldown. Or if they have a lot of healing, like an Afro, or you know, like a Hell or something, or a Guan Yu, then you'd want to build anti-heal straight away. You always want to build anti-heal in general, because everyone heals, everyone builds lifesteal, and if you can reduce someone's healing, you're effectively making them a lot weaker, so that's really important. So you'd want to go Pestilence usually because it has the best stats. It's better out of Contagion. It gives you 80 magical protections, which makes you almost unkillable for the mage. and it gives you 300 health. Although if they have 4 physical, then you can go Contagion, but usually you would want to go Pestilence. So that's your first 5 items. Your last item is really up to you. You can be creative. I personally like a damage item as my last item, so I actually go with a Divine Ruin. So Divine Ruin, when you do magical damage, when you do like an ability damage with ARES, they get a debuff, a 40% there's a 40% healing debuff. So that alongside your Pestilence or your Contagion, you anti-heal for them for 65%, which is incredible. Even if they haven't got natural healers, even someone like Asilla, she hasn't got any healing on her kit, but she tends to build Soul Gem. So having double anti-heal on somebody like Asilla works really, really well. You can also go something like an Ethereal Staff, which gives you an insane amount of health because of its passive. Its passive is a bit wordy, but trust me, it gives you a lot of health. And it also does a lot of damage, to be fair. Sometimes I even go Soul Reaver. Now, to be honest, Soul Reaver is like a bit of a niche one, but I only go it if I'm playing a ranked game and I feel like my team's not doing enough damage. I go for a Soul Reaver because it works really well with ARES 3. It does a lot of magical damage, and it's a really good item. So I'm going to go over misconceptions with ARES and builds that items that people will use on him that I don't personally use for experience. I've tried them loads myself, but I've stopped using them. So the first item is, I think it's called Void Stone. I have it on the screen. Now if you look at it, look at the stats, it gives you power, magical defense, health, and an aura which reduces enemy magical protections by 15%. Now when you read that, you think to yourself, wow, this item was made for ARES, that you have to build it. So when you play ARES, you always think to yourself, like, I have to try this item out. And if you're new with him, I definitely recommend trying that item out. But once you start playing with ARES quite a bit, you figure out that this item's not ideal on ARES. So first things first, the reason why you wouldn't build it is because the base stats they're alright, they're not incredible. So 50 power, including ARES' passive, it is quite nice, but the defense and the health and the aura, it just doesn't work in a game. Like when you actually try it in game, it doesn't feel as good as it should do. It's hard to explain, but it just doesn't feel as good in game because the passive only helps you and helps an magical ally, which will just be the mid laner. But it just doesn't work. I don't know. Like I don't know how to explain it, but like when you actually try it in game, it doesn't feel that great. You're much better off building like Divine Ruin, like I mentioned, because the anti-heal, the flat pen, and the power for that works a lot better, and you're always going to build enough protections anyway. Divines, not Divine, sorry, Void Stone, I just don't know where you would fit it in. I've tried it, I'm just not a huge fan of it. So the second item is Pythagorean's Piece. Now at the end I mentioned that you should build a one damage item. You can build Pythagorean's Piece if you want to. I found that Pythagorean's Piece is a really nice item, especially if you build it last. But the thing I find about it is people tend to build it way too early, which you shouldn't do. You shouldn't build a damage item really early on like that. And if you build the last item, that the lifesteal, it's kind of negligent late game because people build so much anti-heal anyway. So Pythagorean's Piece just has the same sort of issue. Like your allies don't seem to benefit of it as much as you would want it to. It's great for burning objectives like fire giants. If you got it on, then your team can burn down Gold Fury and fire giants. But apart from that, in an actual team fight, an item like Soul Reaver absolutely shreds through anybody. Like ARES 3 with Soul Reaver shreds through anybody. Divine Ruin, like I mentioned, is better for like anti-heal. But yeah, those two kind of items just work a lot better than I feel a Pythagorean's Piece. And I don't know, it's just from personal experience. I'm not a huge fan of it on ARES. It works okay on ARES solo, but not that great. I would just avoid it altogether. Right, so the last two things I wanted to mention before I finish off the commentary is Sovereignty and Heartward Amulet. So Sovereignty and Heartward Amulet, they're both defensive items that give you health and either magical or physical protection depending on which one, and it also gives you HP 5 or MP 5 depending on which one. Now the reason why they're really good is because they have a passive that gives your allies magical or physical defense depending on which one. So Heartward gives you magical defense and your allies, and Sovereignty gives your teammates physical defense. So obviously these sound amazing. I wanted to talk about it because with regards to these items, you wouldn't build either of them first, second, third or fourth item, simply because there's only very niche situations where you would actually build them really early or really late. So let's think about it. If you build Sovereignty, which is the physical defense version, if you build that first, second or third item, then basically you won't have any magical defense, or you'll have very little magical defense until you finish your gauntlet. So it'll take you ages for you to have actual meaningful magical defense. So you will die really easily to like magical gods. And the passive doesn't help your teammates against magical gods. So when you go to mid lane and it's you and your mid laner versus the enemy mid laner and the enemy support, they're usually both two magicals. So Sovereignty doesn't work well in a 2v2 in that situation, because it's two magicals versus two magicals usually. So Sovereignty isn't great in that situation. And I say if you build Heartward Amulet, well, you're very squishy for the enemy hunter and the enemy assassin usually, because assassins tend to be physical and you have got very low physical defense. Like you only get physical defense when you only have meaningful physical defense when you fully stack gauntlets, but until then you're really weak. So that's why you wouldn't build these items early. You try to avoid building them late, simply because you have too much health and you'd want to do at least a bit of damage late game. You could build it over Pridwin, or instead of, you know, so you could build it instead of Pridwin, like either or. But to be honest, the only situations where I would build either of them is if they've got too many of either magical or physical. So if they have 4 physical, I would 100% build Sovereignty, and if they have like 3 magical, like the carry is a magical or the assassin is a magical, then I would definitely build Heartward Amulet. You can build that after gauntlets. You still build mantle first. So I'd build either or if they have too many of each. And apart from that, I wouldn't really build it in any other scenario because it's just not as effective. You're better off going for the build that I've tried. Like I said, if you're new with ARES, just try out whatever items you want or whatever build. See what works best for you. I definitely recommend trying out my build and seeing how that works. And just let me know how it goes. That's going to be the end of the commentary, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys for the next one.
Let me.
Killing spree.
Stealthily.
Enemy Phoenix. I see. Winter's shield. hero has got to be strong, got to be fast, and got to be fresh from the fight.